Osamu was one of the greatest authors in the world, living in Japan during the Middle Ages. Despite his loneliness and awkwardness, he fell in love with one of his students and wished to marry her. Unfortunately, society did not accept this, and, engulfed in sadness, they decided to end their lives together and live in heaven. However, Osamu was transported to a magical world ruled by the Demon King. His only goal became to find his beloved so they could live peacefully. Everything happened too quickly for him to grasp, but the only memory he has of his past life is walking through the rain on a dreary, overcast day. He crossed a bridge and stopped by the bank of a rapidly flowing river. He remembers looking into his beloved's eyes and tying their hands together with a red string as they decided to end their lives. But just as they were about to jump into the river, the bushes behind them began rustling. Truck-kun emerged, angry that anyone would try to die without its consent. As usual, Truck-kun ended up ice-gifting them both, according to their wish. The next moment, Osamu opened his eyes to find himself in a well-lit cathedral, designed in the style of Western civilization. Wondering if he had arrived in heaven, he heard a voice calling out to him, saying that this was not heaven. Turning around, he saw a beautiful woman clad in a blue dress, who identified herself as Annette, a priestess whose job was to guide the hero through this world. She walked toward the window and called Osamu to join her. She told him that this world was very different from the one he had known. Here, magic ruled the skies and the earth, while dragons roamed freely. Magical creatures, such as giants and fire-breathing birds, filled the land. She explained that this world was covered in darkness, and only a hero could restore the light. Osamu, still confused, realized that after failing to even decide his own death, he had now been sent to another world. Grabbing his head, he thought about how weak and shameful he was for being unable to choose whether he should live or die. Annette gave him some space and began explaining a mission she wanted to send him on. But before she could finish, a bottle of sedatives rolled toward her feet. She looked up in horror to see that Osamu had once again tried to end his life by swallowing all the sleeping pills. Annette immediately took out her staff and began healing him with magic, bringing him back to consciousness. However, Osamu appeared more annoyed than relieved and asked her to stop bothering him. She told him to pull himself together, as he was going to be the hero of this world, but he didn't care. Instead, he began picking up the pills and eating them one by one. She told him that he had been chosen by Lord Truck-kun himself. Whenever a person is extremely sad with their old life, Truck-kun visits them and transports them to a new world where they can live happily. Osamu continued munching on the pills as if they were candy and walked up to the goddess. He told her that dying with his beloved would have been the happiest moment of his life. Annette was bewildered, but Osamu simply lit a cigarette and began smoking. She decided to show him his stats, as every person transported to another world typically had godlike abilities. To her surprise, he had only 1 GP and was poisoned, even now. She expanded his skill set, hoping to find an overpowered ability that would change his stats for the better. But to her astonishment, he had 0 abilities, no magic, and the only equipment he had was cigarettes and matches. Realizing there must have been a mistake, she apologized to Osamu, claiming it was her fault for calling him here, as he was extremely weak and had no skills to defend himself. Osamu stood up and looked at Annette, telling her that he had been branded a failure his entire life, so it wasn't anything new for him. He began walking away, but Annette stopped him, telling him to wait. Given his condition and lack of strength, he would die the moment he left the cathedral since monsters were roaming outside. Osamu told her not to worry, as he simply wanted a place to die, and kept walking. Annette was shocked. She remembered how excited she had been when she first got this job, but after dealing with countless self-centered heroes, like the corporate hero who acted like her manager or the arrogant hero who only sought praise, she lost interest. She had become robotic in her job, flattery coming out of her mouth without any genuine emotion. But this man was different. She ran after him, urging him to at least choose a profession, but Osamu told her that he was a born writer and knew nothing else. After leaving the cathedral, he began munching on more sleeping pills when an AI voice in his head informed him that he had gained some XP. Annoyed by the voice, Osamu told it not to talk in his head because he had a migraine. To his dismay, a song started playing as the voice announced that he had reached level 2. Already feeling like dying, Osamu was startled when a huge tree suddenly fell behind him. He walked over to find a demonic tree grabbing a beast girl while she screamed for help. He looked at her and got an idea to write a novel, asking if he could write about her. She screamed at him to save her first. He awkwardly tried to reach for her but failed, and the confused girl asked if he didn't have any sword or magic skills. Suddenly, the tree grabbed his throat and lifted him into the air. Osamu began to have trouble breathing but seemed oddly at ease as he looked at the girl and declared that death was very peaceful. The furry girl urged him not to joke around, explaining that the tree sucked the life force from its prey and that if they didn't act soon, they would both die. Osamu remained unfazed as he lost consciousness, and the girl believed her life was coming to an end. However, to her surprise, the ground shook, and the tree suddenly exploded from one side, withering away into dust. The girl looked completely confused, while Osamu appeared sad, having failed to die once again. The AI voice informed Osamu that he had gained a large amount of XP by using the poison in his body to kill the enemy. It was then that the furry girl realized the tree had absorbed the poison already in Osamu's body, which caused it to die. The voice told Osamu that he was now level 3, while he held his head and grabbed another cigarette. The girl commented that he was pretty strong, but Osamu didn't seem to care. He sadly muttered that this was the 5th time his death wish hadn't been granted, and he had survived once again. The girl was confused and didn't understand what was wrong with him. She asked him to come with her to her house for some food and grabbed his hand. At that moment, the memory of his beloved Satch flashed in front of his eyes. He looked at the red thread still on his wrist and wondered if Satch had also been transported to this world. The furry girl, noticing his confusion, told him her name wasn't Satch, but Osamu didn't seem to hear her. He got up, a smile forming on his face, and started walking away, repeating Satch's name. He thought he had found a new reason to live in this strange, magical world. He recalled the moment before their deaths and vowed to find Satch, no matter where she was in this world. Once he found her, they would end their lives together, as they had decided. Osamu walked back toward the cathedral, where he found Annette praying to God to keep him safe. She was happy to see him again but a little disappointed to learn he was already with a girl. Osamu didn't care and asked Annette if she knew anyone named Satch who might have been transported to this world with him. This shocked Annette even more, as now she had to compete with 2 women. Without any leads, Osamu started wandering again with the furry girl while munching on sedatives. The furry girl told him that he would definitely find the girl he was looking for soon. But until then, they should visit the nearby town of Roth. As soon as she grabbed his hand, Annette appeared and hit her with her staff, telling her that public hand-holding was indecent. The furry girl immediately realized that Annette was in love with Osamu and started teasing her. Annette denied it, explaining that her job was to guide heroes and keep them safe. The furry girl seemed to understand now and remarked that Osamu had saved her from the demon tree with just a single attack. Annette, however, felt even more dejected, thinking that Osamu had already grown so close to another woman. When she turned around, she saw Osamu climb into a coffin. He claimed he had been feeling dizzy since arriving in this world and was going to sleep now. With that, he closed the coffin, forcing Annette to tow it along, hoping to reach the nearby town where the real adventures would begin. The furry girl was also forced to drag the coffin alongside Annette, which frustrated her. She started shouting at Osamu to come out and walk like a normal person. When there was no reply from inside the coffin, she became worried and asked Annette if he was dead. Annette quickly checked his stats and reassured her that he was fine and just resting. Osamu, meanwhile, was enjoying the ride, remembering the face of his beloved. His dreams were interrupted when the furry girl screamed for him to hop out as they had arrived near the city. He stepped out of the coffin and admired the beautiful city of Roth, gleaming in the sunset, with shops bustling and roads filled with animals carrying loads. Annette told him they shouldn't waste time and should head to the palace to meet the king. They left the coffin behind and began walking toward the castle. Inside the castle, they were greeted by the fat king, Tomas, and his beautiful daughter, Princess Charlotte. Both Annette and Tama dropped to one knee, but Osamu remained standing, refusing to bow like a beta. The king offered them beds for the night and food as long as they stayed, but wanted something in return. The king explained that he enjoyed hearing thrilling stories from travelers and would like to hear some from Osamu. This was a mistake. Osamu looked at him with dead eyes and told him he could teach the king how to sleep in a coffin. The king, terrified, thought Osamu had just threatened him in his own palace. Annette quickly distracted the king by complimenting Princess Charlotte, and the king, pleased, mentioned that she was soon to be married. He decided to introduce her to the potential suitors and called them in. The door opened, and a large knight entered the court, accompanied by a slender man carrying a harp. The king introduced the knight, Gomez, as one of the strongest men around, and Otto, the clever musician with a sharp mind for politics. The king explained that the Demon King had increased activities near the area, but he was too fat and old to fight demons. He wanted one of his sons-in-law to handle the problem. While Osamu continued munching on poison pills, the king asked which of the two suitors would be better suited to be the next king of the kingdom. Osamu didn't care and told the king that he had no idea. He called the king stupid for leaving the fate of the kingdom in the hands of random travelers and, with a smile, told him he wasn't even fit to be king, both figuratively and literally. The king was in shock, but Osamu simply turned around and walked out of the court, leaving the two girls behind to apologize on his behalf. Later that night, Osamu sat on his bed, staring at the beautiful moon, lost in his thoughts. Annette woke up and asked if everything was okay. Osamu explained that he was never able to sleep comfortably and that it was normal for him to stay awake the entire night, gazing at the sky. Suddenly, Annette noticed something beneath the blanket and ripped it off, only to find Tama cuddling in Osamu's bed, deep asleep. She hit her with a pillow and began shaming her for being so indecent, calling her a furry. However, Osamu couldn't handle all the shouting, so he calmly made his way outside the room and started walking in search of some peace in the hallways. He spotted a shadowy figure, who turned out to be Princess Charlotte, looking out toward the lake. He joined her, and she greeted him as he walked beside her. Looking out at the lake, Osamu claimed that it was so beautiful that he just wanted to drown himself in it. This shocked the princess, who asked if he was feeling okay, but Osamu turned the question around and asked if she was okay, considering how stressed she must be. Princess Charlotte looked a little sad and told him that Gomez was a strong knight with many soldiers under him, making him very dependable and the best choice for the kingdom. But Otto, her best friend since childhood, used to write songs for her whenever she felt down. This made the choice very difficult for her, and Osamu understood. He told her that for the longest time, he had been trying to end his life, greatly inconveniencing a lot of people, but he still had enough self-respect not to let anyone else choose how he should live. This opened the princess's eyes, and as Osamu walked away, he told her she should do whatever her heart desires and not worry about anyone else. The next morning, the king called them all into the court and happily announced that his daughter had finally made her decision, asking them to act as witnesses. The princess looked up and began walking down, claiming that she had thought long and hard about it and had finally decided she wanted to offer herself alongside Osamu. This shocked everyone, knocking Annette out, while Thomas screamed at Charlotte to stop messing around. However, Charlotte didn't care and told Osamu that she had thought Otto sang songs for her whenever she felt down, but last night, when she was happy, he was still singing his song, which ruined her sleep and made her realize that Otto was just a narcissistic prick. She also couldn't choose Gomez because he was a smelly old brute. The king ran to her and told her she needed to choose a husband, but the princess called him an idiot for never asking for her permission and announced that she didn't want to get married. She told Osamu that he was the only one who had considered her feelings. Suddenly, the huge knight removed his helmet in anger, insecure about being called smelly. They all watched in shock as he transformed into a weird, demonic-looking bull and claimed that he was one of the officers of the Demon King's army. He wanted to marry the princess and become the king so he could offer the kingdom to the Demon Lord. Osamu looked at Charlotte and commented that he did indeed smell quite a lot, which enraged the bull. The demon vowed to kill them all for this disrespect. Tama tried to wake Annette up while a bunch of guards rushed into the court to protect the king, but with a single punch, the demon blasted them all away, along with a broken pillar. Tama barely dodged the pillar as she carried Annette and jumped away, making her angry. She decided to retaliate, rushing in and delivering a knee to the demon's ugly mug, shaking him completely as he never expected a furry to fight back. Otto, seeing this, decided to sing his newest song for them, which actually acted as a buff, increasing Tama's stats significantly. The bull immediately rushed toward Tama with his horns ready to skewer the beast girl, but Tama was much more nimble and slid beneath the attack before kicking the demon in the face. The demon persisted, so she tried to punch him away, but he blocked it with his horns and attacked her. She backed off just in time to save her life, though a small cut appeared on her face, and she started bleeding. Tama got into her stance, fully aware that the bull's horns were sharp and very hard. The monster prepared to go all out in hopes of finishing the fight quickly. Before he could attack though, Osamu interrupted him by calling him a cow, then asked if he could kill him and Charlotte first. This took Charlotte by surprise while the king tried to tell them to stop. The bull laughed with fire in his eyes, promising to kill them before killing the king and then every last person in the kingdom because Osamu called him a cow. The demon immediately started running full speed toward Osamu, while Charlotte began having second thoughts. She finally said she didn't want to die, tears flowing from her eyes. Osamu smiled, claiming that this time, she was actually telling the truth. He pushed her out of the way, standing there, ready to face his death. Thankfully, Annette woke up and immediately cast a shield wall in front of Osamu, promising she wouldn't let him die as long as she was around him. The demon bull kept pushing against the shield, trying to break it, but to everyone's surprise, he ended up breaking his own horns as he stumbled back in pain. This gave Tama the opportunity to strike, and she immediately jumped in with a calm, halal hubba, blasting the demon through the walls and out into the lake. Tama and Annette both let out a sigh of relief, realizing the problem was finally over. Otto praised them and promised to convert the story of this struggle into a song. Charlotte watched the lake from the hole in the wall when her father ran up to her, and immediately fell to his knees, apologizing for never considering her feelings. He claimed that he was not fit to rule the kingdom. Charlotte hugged him deeply and told him she had already forgiven him. They decided to openly discuss their feelings from now on and rule the kingdom together. The next morning, the king stepped down from his position and became an advisor while Charlotte ascended to become the youngest queen the kingdom had ever seen. Annette and Tama once again left on their journey, lugging the huge coffin behind them, while Osamu slept inside, waiting to see what new adventures awaited them soon. Both Tama and Annette carried Osamu in his coffin for the next few days, with him barely coming out of it. Tama started getting tired, and they decided to take a break. Just then, Osamu emerged from his coffin, asking if it was time to eat. He claimed he would like to have some boiled tofu, but when he saw the confused priestess's face, he simply reclined back into his shell. Annette started noting down the food to buy from the next town. While Annette was looking at the map to figure out where they were, Tama asked when they would reach her homeland, called Grunt. Annette immediately looked it up and claimed they were a couple of days away. She told Tama they would have to stop at one of the temples there. Tama shoved some bread in Annette's face and asked why they had to stop. Annette replied that usually, heroes from other worlds travel straight to the Demon Lord's castle to try and defeat him, but Osamu didn't seem to have any such goals. He only wanted to find his beloved Satch. Because of this, they would have to roam around and gather more information about her. Tama started teasing Annette for liking Osamu, but she immediately denied it, claiming that she was just trying to guide him, which was her job. Tama told her she would accompany them to her hometown, but after that, they would have to travel alone. Annette claimed she had already sent her resignation through a familiar to the temple, so it shouldn't be a problem. But to her surprise, the familiar came back and started biting Osamu on the head, who had come out for a smoke break. She immediately grabbed the familiar and discovered it hadn't delivered her resignation. Annoyed, she threw the familiar away, but Osamu found it cute and named it Milos before retreating back into his coffin. Suddenly, Milos started acting weird and ran away out of fear, which surprised Annette. Before they could respond, a giant red dragon descended from the sky above and landed just a few feet away from them. Both Annette and Tama were horrified, as a dragon was the world's most powerful monster. The dragon roared at them while they stood frozen in place, too terrified to move. Just when they thought the end was near, a voice behind them commanded the dragon to back off, and the dragon obeyed. They turned around to find a small, white-haired hooded girl who walked past them and started petting the dragon. The girl spoke to the dragon in a foreign language, which shocked both Tama and Annette, as this meant she had tamed the dragon. The girl turned around and told them to leave immediately, as this place was very dangerous. But before they could reply, Osamu emerged from his coffin once again for a smoke. He told the young girl that Osamu was an otherworldly hero. Immediately after hearing this, the girl's attitude changed. She removed her cloak to reveal that she was a dragon herself, and her aura started pushing them back. Annette couldn't believe the power this girl possessed, while the girl claimed she would kill any otherworlders she saw. The dragon girl immediately charged a magic attack and shot it toward Osamu, but Annette, being a true friend, stood her ground and placed a shield in front of them. The dragon girl's power was too much though, and Annette's shield broke, creating a huge explosion. Thankfully, as the dust settled, Annette managed to deflect the attack at the last moment and saved their lives, but now she was completely depleted and collapsed to the ground. They somehow managed to stand up as Annette told Tama they had to defend Osamu, but the dragon girl simply walked up and used her gravity magic to push them back to their knees, causing an intense pressure to weigh on them. Suddenly, Annette noticed a special mark on the dragon girl and realized that this person was none other than the Demon Lord herself. The Demon Lord started charging another attack, but Osamu calmly got up and told her that she should leave the girls alone as he walked toward her. Osamu claimed that he was her opponent and was ready to die, so the Demon Lord didn't waste a second and stabbed him through the chest with her bare hands. Both Annette and Tama were horrified as Osamu fell to the ground in a pool of his own blood while the demon lord walked away from the scene, bidding them farewell. Tama and Annette collapsed from shock and exhaustion, but Osamu spoke up to the demon lord, claiming he could feel her hatred when she stabbed him. The demon lord was completely taken off guard as she watched Osamu get up and walk toward her. He claimed that when he was really sad, he also wanted to stab someone to feel something. He touched her face and claimed that her eyes were very sad, asking why she was so sad. The demon lord recovered from the shock and immediately jumped on the dragon, flying away from the area, completely baffled. Osamu fell to the ground once again, but thankfully, Milos had been hidden in the corner and immediately carried them all to the nearby temple, where the priestess was shocked to find Annette close to death. She asked if Annette was okay, but Annette only told the priestess to save Osamu's life, as he was bleeding continuously. The priestess immediately summoned every healer in the temple and started taking care of them. By the next morning, Osamu was up again, doing his usual thing, buying the most deadly poison and chugging it like a white girl at a frat party. Tama immediately smacked the bottle away and started shouting at him. The priestess, named Isha, asked Annette why she was there. Annette immediately asked if Isha knew anyone named Satch, but Isha denied having any knowledge of her and asked why the hell Annette was traveling with Otherworlders. She told Annette that she felt relieved to hear that Annette had quit her job, as Otherworlders were massive jerks who only used the powers given to them for their own good. While telling Annette to stop traveling with Osamu, another Otherworlder walked up to them and started rapping like Drake after Kendrick Lamar. He flexed his money, claiming to have the power of infinite multiplication, which he was using only for his own benefit. Isha got mad at the Drake-like figure and threw his money back in his face, telling him to get lost since he could only strike a chord with minors. Isha tells Annette that every Otherworlder is the same narcissistic prick, but Annette claims that Osamu is different, as he completely changed her life. Just then, Osamu walks up to her asking for money to buy some deadly drugs. Annette starts pouring money into his hands without even looking. Isha asks what kind of gift Osamu has, but Annette replies that Osamu doesn't have any abilities or special skills and is pretty weak. Even so, he put his life on the line to save both her and Tama from the Dark Lord. Isha is shocked and tells Annette that it's not possible, as another Otherworlder just killed the Demon Lord 7 days ago. Later that day, Annette tells Tama about the Demon Lord, and even Tama is surprised, though at the same time, happy that they can finally live in peace. Annette, however, is still confused because it doesn't explain why they met the other girl with the Demon Lord mark on her. Suddenly, Osamu tears up all the pages he was writing on, as he is only writing brain-dead gibberish, like J.K. Rowling in her tweets. Annette tells him to stop being a nerd and takes him out for shopping, where she buys him a huge, thick set of armor that covers his entire body, which is too big for him. Tama claims that Osamu can't even walk in that, but Annette insists that she can't bear to see him get hurt, so this armor will have to do. Afterward, she puts the helmet on top and tells him to stay where he is while she goes ahead to buy some other things. This turns out to be a bad idea, as Osamu soon gets surrounded by onlookers. Thankfully, Isha spots him and asks what the hell he's doing here. Osamu replies that he's just chilling, but Isha doesn't seem to warm up to him. She claims that Annette will be staying with her from now on and that Osamu will have to continue his journey alone. Osamu grins like an idiot but tells her that it's up to Annette to decide whether she wants to stay with Isha or travel with him, as she is not a caged bird and should be free to decide for herself. Before they can argue anymore, they hear a lot of noise coming from the town center, followed by a huge number of monster dogs. Drake introduces him as Lord Suzuki, and the blonde, cocky bastard sits atop his monster wolf, telling the residents that the Demon Lord was defeated by one of them, the Otherworlders. This excites the common people, who are happy that peace and prosperity will finally prevail. But that's just the start of Suzuki's speech, as he tells them that the Otherworlders put their lives at risk to save this world, so now it will be ruled by them completely. This shocks everyone, as they don't know what to think about the situation, while Drake declares Suzuki as the lord of the city. Suddenly, Drake spots Annette and immediately tells Suzuki that she was the one who dissed him for no reason. Suzuki gets off his dog, walks toward Annette with a smug smile on his face, and puts his hand on top of her head, while she wonders if this is where her adventure ends. Tama is too scared to do anything against this overpowered hero, when suddenly, Suzuki uses a special skill of his that immediately takes control of Annette's body. She feels her soul getting trapped in a cage as she's enslaved by his spell and falls to her knees, her eyes turning yellow. Tama is utterly confused about what just happened, but Drake laughs, claiming that Suzuki's special skill helps him enslave anyone he puts his hands on, and the purer that person is, the more easily they get enslaved. Tama is enraged by this, screaming at him to turn her friend back to normal while grabbing Drake by the collar to punch him in his face. Before she can do anything, though, Suzuki grabs her head from behind and uses his special spell again, immediately enslaving Tama as well. She falls to her knees, just like Annette. Suzuki starts boasting about how his skill is so utterly overpowered that nothing and no one can stand in front of him. But when everyone in the crowd is silent, Isha's voice rings out loudly, calling Suzuki a massive poo-poo head for using a spell like that on innocent people. She tells him that this town will never surrender to anyone as stupid as Suzuki, and all the townspeople shout in agreement. Suzuki isn't deterred, though, as he smiles and claims that it doesn't matter what the weak people of this world want. He says that if they won't surrender to him, he'll simply destroy their entire town and build his kingdom on their ashes. He commands his rap monster dogs to attack all the townspeople, and immediately all hell breaks loose as people start running in all directions to escape the monsters. Suzuki laughs and starts walking away. Isha screams at him while being surrounded by 4 monsters herself, telling him to stop this madness if he has any humanity left, but he doesn't care and leaves her to die at the hands of his monster dogs. The city soon turns into a battlefield as the monster dogs wreak havoc, burning all the buildings and houses while the residents run for safety. Meanwhile, Osamu is still in his neat little armor when Tama, completely under Suzuki's control now, ends up attacking him. She claws at the armor with all her might, landing destructive hits, but the armor is very thick and saves him. He thinks to himself that you can't even trust your friends these days. Suddenly, with one devastating punch, Tama manages to break through the breastplate, but the helmet flies off and hits her in the face, knocking her out. Osamu gets out of the armor and puts Tama into a barrel for safety, wondering what to do next when suddenly, Isha gets slammed into a wall beside him. He looks at her with a blank face and asks what's happening, while she tells him that this is why she doesn't trust otherworlders. They're all greedy and narcissistic idiots who don't care about anyone. She tells him that when Suzuki first came to this world, she was the one who showed him how to survive, as he was a very weak-willed man who wouldn't even hurt a mosquito. This seems to interest Osamu, as he starts taking notes for his next thriller novel, before asking where this Suzuki person is. Isha looks confused but claims that he went to the church. Osamu decides to follow Suzuki while leaving Tama under Isha's care. Isha tries to stop him, claiming that he will die if he goes alone, and decides to accompany him to find a way to kick Suzuki out of the city. They finally reach the church, where Isha asks if Osamu has a plan. Osamu doesn't seem to hear her and takes out a bottle of poison, which she thinks is for killing the demon dogs. But to her horror, this absolute unit of a man chugs down the entire bottle right in front of her. Isha tells him they should sneak in through the back entrance, but Osamu decides to cut to the chase and opens the main gate. Inside, they find Suzuki seated on a throne with Drake and his demon dogs. Suzuki asks Isha whether she found an otherworlder to help her. Osamu claims he is simply there to write a novel about Suzuki, which at first makes Suzuki happy, thinking it would be a heroic tale. But Osamu reveals that the novel is about corruption, and how greed and narcissism are the ugliest traits a man can have. This doesn't sit well with Suzuki, who sends his monster dogs ahead to attack them. Isha immediately pushes Osamu away and uses her light magic to knock most of the dogs back, but one manages to break through and almost bites her down. Thankfully, she uses her staff to block the beast, but the other monster dogs aim fire blasts at Osamu. He stands there, calmly taking notes. Isha screams at him to move out of the way since she can't help him right now, but he stands his ground. Suddenly, Milos appears, wearing the helmet, and deflects all the fireballs perfectly, sending them back at Suzuki and his dogs. Osamu thanks Milos for his help while Suzuki decides to use the demon alpha wolf to finish the battle. He warns them that one bite from this deadly wolf will end their life. The wolf leaps into action, immediately biting down on Osamu's shoulder. But to everyone's surprise, the wolf turns black and falls dead from the poison mixed with Osamu's blood. Isha immediately heals Osamu, while Drake runs away, trying to save himself. Isha tells Suzuki to accept his defeat, but he's not ready to do so. He reveals he still has Annette on his side, which shocks Isha. Annette grabs a dagger from Suzuki's hand as he commands her to finish off the intruders. Isha tries to reason with Annette, but she doesn't hear anything and charges at Isha, trying to stab her. Isha blocks the hit and backs off while Osamu keeps writing down notes for his book. Isha tells him they need to back off since they can't hurt Annette, but Osamu moves forward, claiming that Annette isn't as weak as people might think. Suzuki boasts that his spell is so strong that no one can break through it, but Osamu ignores him and walks up to Annette. He asks if this is what she wants. Annette stands still with her knife drawn but doesn't attack him. Blood starts flowing from her as her true self tries to fight for control over her body, grabbing the blade. Suzuki uses his spell again, commanding Annette to attack, but she manages to break through the spell with sheer willpower and falls to the floor unconscious. Osamu catches her midair and asks Isha to heal her completely while he starts writing once again. Suzuki can't believe his eyes. Someone actually managed to break through his overpowered spell, and this realization hits him so hard that he rushes to grab the knife. But instead of attacking Osamu, he tries to end his own life. Thankfully, Osamu grabs the blade immediately, and while blood drips from his hand, he tells Suzuki that he can't take his own life because Osamu is writing a story about him. If he dies, the story will end too quickly. Osamu tells Suzuki to share his entire story, and with teary eyes, Suzuki tells him that back on Earth, he was the subject of constant bullying because of his small size and weak nature. He used to get beaten up regularly at school, and even drunk people on the road would simply cuss him out and walk away, making his life miserable. He tried ending his life multiple times but was too weak to do so. Then, one day, Trunk-kun offered a helping hand and sent him to this magical world. He was shocked to find Isha as his guide, who showed him his special skill, which helped him tame any beast and enslave them. He practiced hard to defeat the demon lord and slowly amassed a small pack of demon dogs as his loyal pets. He used them to kill other monsters, but despite being in a different world, he was still treated poorly because people discriminated against him for being an otherworlder. In anger, he started using his spell on them to feel a sense of power, and along the way, he became a monster himself. Osamu smiles, claiming that his small book is finally complete. It's about a person given a second chance to change his life, but he refused to be a hero, failing to be a villain as well because of his weak nature. Suddenly, the pages from Osamu's book start revolving around Suzuki, casting a blue glow on him, while a magic circle appears beneath him. Osamu tells him it was a good story, but not his masterpiece. He grabs one piece of paper and tears it in half. Bright light suddenly blinds them, and Suzuki vanishes from their sight. Annette and Isha couldn't believe their eyes. They realized that Osamu just sent Suzuki back to his own world, a power they didn't even know existed in this world. By this time, Osamu is bored, lying on his back and nibbling on some sleeping pills. Inside the city, the demon dogs, freed from the spell, return to their forest. Tama emerges from the barrel, back to her old self. The next morning, Isha gets Osamu a beautiful coffin as thanks because that's what he wanted, and he seems pleased to receive it. Isha warns Annette that their journey forward will be extremely difficult, and they may not survive. She asks one more time if Annette wants to stay behind and enjoy life, but Annette refuses, claiming she wants to find out what kind of story her life is going to become. Isha smiles and bids them farewell as they begin moving again, with no clue what new, deadly adventures await them on the road ahead. The story will be continued in future videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.